Hello folks, welcome back to another video. This is going to be a less scripted one because it's something that I think is a very raw subject for about a good 40% of the people in the hobby. And that is why are the Xenos races left behind most of the time in our hobby? If you like what I do, the subscribe button is down below. If you could really try to subscribe, and that sounds weird, but I do it all the time when I'm looking at somebody else's YouTube and I'm not sure whether they want to dive in or not, and then they'll tell me about like a target they want to hit, and then I'll go ahead and do it. That's what I'm doing right now. I need to hit 15,000 subscribers before the end of the year. If you can help me do that, that would make an amazing difference to me and would help me out so much. And if you think my videos might save somebody from boredom in your life, you know, then maybe send my video over there and ask them to subscribe too. Everything like that helps out the channel. Thank you so much for all you do for me and watching my videos and commenting on them and going back and forth with me in the comment section sometimes, and joining the Discord too. I've not mentioned the Discord in so long. It's an amazing place to go if you need someone to talk to. We have so many resources over there. We have so many people there who are ready and willing to help you. You know, there are even entire channels dedicated to pulling you out of a bad spiral, you know? It's an amazing place. So it's there in the comment section, not comment section, in the description down below. Head over there, it's free. You don't need to be a part of our Patreon or anything like that to be over there. Although if you want to be a part of Patreon, that does help as well. Without further ado though, let's get on with some ranting, shall we? Because it is Thursday, and that's what we do on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So, for me, where is the love for Xenos factions? Here's the thing about Xenos players. I think they're the backbone of the hobby. I know, everyone's going to start rolling their eyes and going, well, hang on a minute, aren't most people collecting Space Marines? Yes, but the Space Marine players need to play people. And there is a very good reason why Xenos players never really starve for games in the 40k hobby, especially if they have painted models. Everybody, and I mean everybody, loves playing a rich, diverse cast of characters. And armies, right? We love coming up against Drukhari one week, and Orcs the next week, and then Necrons, and then Chaos Space Marines, and then another Space Marine chapter, and then maybe Imperial Guard, right? It really does help the flavour of the game to be able to play against so many different armies that are out there being played. The problem is the vast majority of armies out there are consisting of Space Marines. Now, you know me. I love me some Space Marines, man. I am a huge Space Marine fan. I love my Grey Knights, and I think, you know, they're the coolest looking models in the range. That doesn't mean that I can't look at somebody else and say, man, I'm sorry you've got it that bad. Because some people in this hobby really do. And I mean that sincerely. Xenos races are underrepresented in Warhammer 40,000 lore and on the tabletop. We know that. While Space Marines and the wider Imperium have whole series of books dedicated just to them as the protagonists of stories and them alone, the Xenos are often relegated to the villains of such stories if they appear at all. What they amount to is cannon fodder, and although in recent years we have seen one or two Xenos races get a facelift in models, the majority are still lagging way behind. This was so much of a bigger problem. I'm way behind the times, I know, but 4 or 5 years ago, this was a huge issue in the hobby. Because the Necrons hadn't had an update, and the Tyranids hadn't had an update, and both of those model lines looked silly. Especially the Tyranids. They just looked silly. Compared what they look like in the lore to what they look like on the tabletop, it didn't even compare. I can only guess at the frustration of players of armies like Dark Eldar, Orcs, and Tau. Let me show you something about the Dark Eldar. And these aren't the newest sets, by the way. When I say the newest sets, the boxes have changed, not the models inside. So we have the Cavalite Warriors here. Lovely stuff, isn't that? Yeah, lovely stuff. From 7th edition. This is 6th and 7th edition box sets of the Cavalite Warriors. Lovely stuff. And you see the models there. They've moved on slightly from 3rd edition, but not very much. You You know, they've got a few more ridges here and there, a few more weapon upgrades here and there, but by and large, they're the same models that we had in 3rd edition. And this is 3 editions or 4 editions later. So we're talking 10, 15 years after 3rd edition, they're still the same models in the same kit. Okay? Let's move it on a few years, though. So 7th edition, end of 7th edition, start of 8th. Something look familiar about the box? No. It's not because it's a worse box, because it is. But look at this. Look at the models in the box. Yeah. Alright, keep your eye on the guy, the ginger guy in the front row on the right. Okay? Now look on the left, far left. It's the same models. It's not even, they're not even painted differently, they're not even built differently. It's literally the same models in the same case. The Games Workshop have gone out, posed them, like turned them around a little bit, changed them around a little bit, and taken the same picture. Just with models standing in different places. That's where we were. Alright? And for the most part, the Kabbalite Warriors and the Dark Eldar are still mired in this sort of rubbish. They're still there. This is still what they're putting up with. I can only imagine and guess the frustrations of guys who collect Dark Eldar, Orcs, Tau and other Xenos races who never seem to get an update to their model lines, who then have to watch as Space Marines get a slew of new models for each big 40k release. It seems Games Workshop is only updating Xenos factions if they are lucky enough to be in the core starter box set of the main game opposite, you guessed it, Space Marines. So what gives? What gives? There are a few actual, you know, huge problems here when it comes to our model lines. If you look at even the Orcs here, look at the Orc Boys. Now these are the Orc Boys that are still out now, right? You can still go and get these from your local Games Workshop or from your local hobby store. If you ask for Orc Boys, these are the models you will be given. These are models that are now nigh on decades old. They were decent looking in the mid-90s, but now, even look at the faces of these guys. They have no depth to them whatsoever. All their mouths are closed. Their poses look like they're generally lobotomized dudes, which they might be because they're orcs. But look at if you look at the Age of Sigmar orcs compared to 40k orcs, it's not even close. And to get a lovely looking orc army these days, you need to spend twice the money. You need to go and get yourself some Age of Sigmar orcs and convert them to be Warhammer 40k orcs. So basically, yeah, you need double the money spent to get the same army that you could have had ages ago. Now, the orcs have had a few updates, okay, and they are capable of doing brand new models, like this guy here, right? But most of the models that come out for the orcs, in terms of, you know, being this really cool thing, they're always part of a specialist unit or one-off thing, or they're released as a part of like a one-off specialist model you can get from Games Workshop as a part of an event or a scheme that they're doing or whatever. They're never really released as part of a big revamp of here's the orcs, here's what we're doing with them, brand new models, and we know they can, because they did so for Age of Sigmar to push it down your throat and try and get you to buy Age of Sigmar. They really put their best foot forward with the orc models over there, which is why I'm always a bit ashamed and annoyed that they haven't done the same thing for 40k. If you look at the vast majority of the orc models you can get, none of them are up to snuff. The good guys of our setting, the Imperium, let's be honest, they need something to fight that is not chaos, but let's also be honest, most armies in the Imperium, most armies that the Imperium fights are just stand-ins so the heroes of the setting can look good. Yes, there are people trying to readdress the balance, like Aaron Dembski-Bowden and other writers like that, but they come off as woefully biased towards Chaos and Xenos. And for the most part, Chaos and Xenos are there to be punched in the face by the good guys. Literally. I mean, look, for a long time, Orc players have begged for new models for their lads, or for their lads to be a part of a cool model set. And Games Workshop said, hey, say no more, son. And this came out. And when this came out, a friend of mine, let's call him Steve, lost his fucking mind. Why? Because he's an Orc player, and he got sent this as, hey, there's a new Orc model. Is there? Oh my god! Is it a HQ model? Yes, it is, my friend. It's a HQ model. Awesome! I'll go look this up. And then here we go. Right? This is the kind of thing you get if you're a Xenos player. That's what you are. You are fodder for the Space Marines. And the most highly detailed, beautiful-looking Orc we've had in the past 20 years of Warhammer 40,000 is being stabbed in the chest by a Black Templar. That's it. He's a piece of scenery. That's what he is. I know guys who've gotten this to use his arms and his head as a part of another model, another Orc model. That's how desperate Xenos players are for new stuff. And all they are is fodder for Space Marines. There is a very interesting thing I wanted to touch on when it comes to why Games Workshop do this. How do they do it, and why do they do it? Well, here's one of the main reasons. We as human beings normally can't breed personal connections with bestial races, or at least we find it very difficult to do so. Very difficult to do so. It's a whole reason why we don't really personify with the Orcs in Lord of the Rings. You know, I know Games Workshop have tried with a few things, and I know people will say, well, I love my Tyranids. That's not the same thing. That's not the same thing. You don't identify with the pain that a Tyranid is going through when he's got a flamer turned on him, for instance. You know what I mean? You don't identify with him. You might think they're cool, but you don't see them as the main characters, or characters you can get behind from a personal standpoint. And if you do, there's probably something wrong with you, let's be honest. Okay? Alright. So, there's a very, very, very top reason why Space Marines are turned to so often. 1, they're recognisable. 2, they look really cool. And 3, they're a power fantasy. They're a male power fantasy. That's one of the main reasons why a lot of people have said there shouldn't be female Space Marines, mainly because we already have Sisters of Battle, and they look better than Space Marines, as far as I'm concerned. They look awesome, especially in the lore and the art as well. Some of the best looking models we've got in the range. Go and collect those. The other thing is that, well, how do I put it? Do you know the Darkspawn in Dragon Age? Right? The Darkspawn in Dragon Age. They are one of the best villains I've ever seen in anything ever, especially in Dragon Age Origins. Why? Because they serve as the perfect backdrop for the world. They literally are the perfect backdrop for the world. They're dark, they're imposing, they're menacing, and you can't reason with them. They can't be reasoned with, and they can't be identified with. They're literal monsters, and they're there for the heroes to smack in the face. The problem is, or the good thing is that they're an actual threat. At least in Dragon Age Origins, they're an actual threat. Whereas, you know, in Warhammer 40,000, exactly the same thing goes for the Orcs and the Tyranids. But here's the thing. There were reams of lore to do with Dragon Age, but the Darkspawn only took up like 2 or 3 pages of a 300-page lore book. There's a very good reason for that. We want to set them up as a main character that you fight against, a main threat that is out there in the world. Once we've done that, generally, as writers, we want to move on and tell you how awesome the heroes are and how they're flawed, but how they're going to try and take on this ultimate evil. That's the process of writing stories, and that's what we've done with Warhammer 40,000. We've given the Xenos races the bare minimum to get by, to be a threat. And it's almost like the writers at Games Workshop, the model makers at Games Workshop, can't wait to get past the Xenos races so they can start telling you how awesome the Space Marines are. Now, again, I'm a Space Marines fan, and even I say this. Even I stick up for my friends who love Xenos races and love to play them, because they have their right to do so. I love to play against Xenos races. I don't want to play against Space Marines all of the time, and the only way I'm going to get to play against a lot of Xenos races is by Games Workshop biting the bullet and giving the people what they want. New model lines and new lore focusing just on the Xenos races, and that's it. It is no... how do I put it? It is no coincidence that the only Xenos race that has entire books dedicated just to it, I know the Orcs have had a few, right, is the Tau, the Farsight books and things like that, right? Because they're personable. They're almost human in the way they go about what they're doing. That is why they're the only ones who've even been touched with the narrative brush. One thing I also wanted to say was that there are two forms of power in any setting that deals with selling a product. Okay? There's two forms. There's Tentpole power and there's constant power. I need to explain those two things, because I literally just came up with them last night when I was thinking about doing this video. So Tentpole power is what the Xenos have. A Tentpole power is kind of like an analogy where we have a circus and we have tentpole events. Do you know what I mean? Like big events that happen in the circus, in the actual big tent. All right. This is the kind of power that Xenos have. Xenos races are only ever really a threat in the lore on one or two occasions, just to showcase their power and what the heroes are going up against. This then makes the Imperium look good when they win against such power levels. Again, it's like having a tent at a circus where you get to shoot monsters in a maze. That'd be cool, wouldn't it? And so you only need the monsters to seem threatening to the people in the door. You need to get people through the door. That's all you need. Come to the door, come to the door, come to the door. And once they're in, who cares? If all that the monster actually is a cardboard cutout or a guy in a lame fucking costume jumping out at you every now and again, right? That's what Tentpole power is. It is a paper tiger, is what it is. It's there to stand up and say, "Rah, look at me, aren't I really threatening?" But when you lift up the hood and you look underneath, it's just some guy in a costume. That's all it is. It's just some guy. Right? That's exactly the depth of the Xenos races in Warhammer 40,000 right now. I know that may seem harsh. I know they do have lore. But please, if you think they've got an appropriate amount of lore, go onto Lexicanum. Go onto the Warhammer 40k wiki. Go onto any sort of lore resource online. Look at Space Marines. And look at, let's just say, Tyranids. Combine the lore. I have done. Right? So, on one count, and I went on 6 pages on the Lexicanum for Space Marines. Only 6, and there were hundreds. And I went on 6 pages. On those 6 pages, there were 84,000 words of lore. 84,000. Just on those pages alone. And there were hundreds of others that I could have gone through. Okay? And only 2 of those were founding legions, like the big ones. Only 2 of those were founding legions, to keep things fair. I then did the entire Tyranid lore breakdown. You know what it was? All of the pages? I can't believe I fucking did this. All of the pages? 50,000 words. There or thereabouts. It was really 49,869. But, still, that's what we had. A couple of Space Marine chapters had more to them, lore-wise, than the entire race of Tyranids. And we're expected to believe this is the big bad. That they should be the big bad. Xenos races should take over Chaos as the big threat, because they've been here the longest, dude. Right? They were here right at the beginning. Chaos came in very early too, don't get me wrong. But the first big guys we were fighting against was the Eldar and Orcs and all these other, you know, rogues gallery of alien weirdos that we used to shoot back in the day. Look at Space Crusade. Who are you fighting in Space Crusade? Who are you fighting in Space Hulk? You're not fighting Chaos, right? Who are you fighting in the Titan game that came out way before 40k even was a little thing? It wasn't Chaos. Okay? Like, it just... They deserve a lot more respect, and Tentpole power isn't it. It's shallow. It's made to get people through the door and pay their money to either play as the monster or have people smack the monster in the face. That's it. And the only people who ever seem to get any love... I'm not talking about rules, by the way, and how powerful people are on the rules. I will get to that in a minute. Because normally, Xenos races are quite powerful in the rules, because they have to be, or no one's going to buy the shitty models. Because most of the models in the Xenos line are shit. The only way people are going to buy an army like Tyranids, which is doing quite well, half the Tyranid models have been updated, but even then, the only way someone's going to buy an army where only half the models have been updated is if you make them powerful in their codex, or in the rules. No one's going to do so otherwise. No one. There's a very good reason why the Imperial Guard have always been broken on release, in terms of how powerful they are. Because the models have been fucking shit for decades. They're not anymore, but they have been. And I'm going to tell you now, this will be the first year, the first edition, where Imperial Guard aren't broken on release. I'm calling it now. They'll be a very balanced army. Why? Because they don't need the rules to get you to buy the models anymore. That's why. Every decision they make is cynical and top down. Where's the money first? That's why Tentpole power sucks. The second form of power is a bit shorter, and it's called constant power. And that's the Imperium. The Imperium's power level, both on and off the tabletop, is for the most part consistent. This does not account for people like Custodies and Grey Knights, who should be way more powerful on the tabletop than they are. Less so Custodies these days, but it's still a thing. Constant power means even when you look under the hood at the lore, the power is still there. Even when you look at the models that you go and buy from your shop, the power is still there. Even when you look at the tabletop rules for your army, the power is still there. In 2 out of 3 arcs of that, Xenos fail. They fail mostly on their lore, because they get 1 or 2 big wins just to set them up as big bads, and then that's it. And they fail on the model count. 2 out of 3 aspects of the hobby, they fail. And in a big way too. That's terrible. That's cynical. And that's what these videos are for. They're to pull the light onto these little issues and go, hang on a second. There's a reason why Games Workshop give you good rules for shitty models. They want you to buy them. And there's a reason why this time around Imperial Guard will be quite balanced. There's a reason why this time around, you know, Xenos races that have had a little bit of an update will come down in power level. Because they don't need the rules for you to buy the models anymore. Everybody in 40k should be on constant power mode. We should have good lore that makes sense, right? And makes their fans punch the air in joy. We should have good models that look great across the line. Not just half the line, Tyranid fans. Not just half the line, the entire line needs to be updated and looking great. And the rules on the tabletop also need to be balanced and powerful to make you feel good when you're playing your army. That's what the game needs to be. But there is a reason why Games Workshop does this beyond selling your models, and it is a brutal one. And it's the one I want to end on today. The Xenos races are not the stars of the show when it comes to Warhammer 40,000. They're not. The background characters. That's what they are. I know a lot of you are going to hate me for saying that, but it's true. They're background characters. We are actually very lucky Games Workshop even bothered, knowing what they're like, to give them a backstory at all. As they are treated as a background threat to be beaten on constantly. If Games Workshop could just sell you empty black bases for the Xenos races and give you more and more and more Space Marines, that's what they would do if they could get away with it. There is nobody at Games Workshop who says we can't do that. We love the Xenos races. If they could sell you empty sprues for the Xenos races that you just pretended were there with your bases, if they could sell you that at the same price and then sell you loads and loads and loads of Space Marines instead, put all of their effort into that, that's what they do. We're lucky we even have this. Does that mean it's right? No, it's completely wrong, and you guys deserve far more love than what you're getting from this hobby that you put so much faith and money behind. But the fact of the matter is, guys, it's like this by design. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't an accident, and it will continue to happen. We will continue to get decades like this. Right? Look at the screen. Decades like this. Where not only do Games Workshop not bring out new models, they don't even bother to change the models on the fucking front of the box. Edition after edition after edition after edition. Yeah. It's a shame. But that's where we are. But for the most part, please know that even though I'm a Space Marine player, and a lot of us are Space Marine players, we would be nothing without you Xenos players. We wouldn't. Because you're the best opponents we have. Why? Because you make our hobby different. You make sure that every battle we can be in is interesting and different. And for once, instead of pretending to be the hero when we're fighting other Space Marine chapters, we can actually be the heroes fighting against Xenos races. So thank you if you collect them. And Chaos players too, to a lesser extent. But so thank you for playing them. Thank you for being those guys. Thank you for being, and I mean this when I say it, the healers of 40k. You know what I mean if you play MMOs. You always have that selfless friend who plays the healer. That's what Xenos players are in our hobby. Alright? So, next time you see one, clap them on the back and offer them a nice balanced game of Warhammer 40k. I love you all a long time. I'll speak to you tomorrow for some more hobby nightmares. There is some doozies tomorrow. I'll see you then. Have a good one. Bye now.